Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Ship, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Ship. Thank you so much for joining us today. Last week, we talked about a really interesting topic called leadership and courage. If you didn't get a chance to listen in, please do. I hope you found some wonderful and insightful information from that episode. This week, we are going to talk about a really unique and interesting topic that I am very excited to be speaking about, and it's actually called human design. And I do have our guest speaker on the show today, Stacy Foust. So Stacy, thank you so much for joining us and being on the show today. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you for having me, Nikki.
Absolutely. But before I let Stacy jump in about what human design is about, I actually want to tell you guys a little bit about Stacy. So I'm going to throw on my readers here for those of you listening in today. So let me tell you a little bit about Stacy. She is an intuitive guide and coach who uses both human design and gene keys to help her clients come into alignment with who they are born to be. We all have the potential to live our greatest lives, and the secret is to understanding ourselves on the deepest level. Human design and gene keys give us the tools to understand our innate strengths and align ourselves with our greatest potential. Stacy has been in actually a direct selling industry for nearly 40 years, leading a highly successful top 10 team in the nation. In addition to her almost 40 years in direct selling industry, also was a leading top 10 team in the country. Stacy has her coaching training from the ICANN Institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She's also completed her Activation, Venus, and Pearl Sequence courses at genekeys.com. And she is super passionate about getting her hands on any and all education that she can find on the subjects of human design and gene keys. Her favorite part about being a manifester is the impact that she can have on others. Stacy, again, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm super excited to be talking about this topic. I want to just kind of jump right in, and so that our audience can learn a little bit about you. I actually had Stacy do my human design and also Drayson's human design. So we'll tap in a little bit more about that in just a little bit here on the show about Drayson's human design, which actually was really insightful for me and helped me to learn a lot about my son. But before we go down that rabbit hole, why don't you first kind of just jump right in, Stacy, and tell us, how did you get into becoming a human design coach?
Sure. It started back in the summer of 2019. I've always been fascinated by all the personality strength tests, like Enneagram and Strength Finders and DISC and Myers-Briggs, all of them. Mm-hmm. And I was watching a TV program. I think it was on TV or it was on YouTube, one of the two. And in the middle of the program, somebody just casually mentioned human design. And I went, what is that? And then they didn't come back to it. So, of course, I had to jump off and Google it and figure out what it was. And at first I was like, oh, this is too out there, because it's based on birth date, birth time, and birth location.
Yeah, so it's very kind of woo-woo-y.
Very woo-woo-y.
Yeah.
Yeah, very esoteric. And I thought, this isn't anything I'm interested in, but I could not let it go. So I did my own profile. And when I was reading that profile, my mind was just blown, because I thought, how do they know this about me? Are they reading my mail? What's going on? So it was so right on in so many respects. And so then I, of course, had to do my husband's, and then my kids, and then my grandkids, and then my friends. And so every single one of them was so correct.
Okay.
And I already had a career. I really wasn't looking for another career. And so when COVID hit
Right.
in 2020, 6 months later, I thought, you know what? COVID's only going to be around for like 6 weeks. That's what I thought. I thought, I'm just going to.
2 weeks. It's just 2 weeks.
Just 2 weeks. I thought, you know what? I'm going to just spend this time looking into this a little bit more. And I just couldn't stop. So fast forward to this last fall, I just could not leave it alone. So I decided to do this to help people.
And how do you feel that it's helped you personally? I mean, obviously, you know, it sounds like you've learned a lot about yourself just personally doing human design and Gene Keys.
Oh my goodness. So many ways. So many ways. So human design, I think the most important thing for people to learn about their design is, number one, we're not supposed to make decisions from our minds, which is very countercultural.
Very, yeah.
We're to think things through, weigh out the pros and cons, but we're really not. Our minds are really for just figuring out like communication and learning things.
Okay.
But when it comes to decision making, it shows up in our bodies. And so for me, I'm a splenic manifester, meaning my intuition is my only decision maker. And it's very much in the now, like right now. And when I listen to it, it 100% leads me down the right path. And if I don't listen to it, it does not lead me down the right path.
Right.
And being raised by a dad who is an emotional decision maker, he was always like, you need to sleep on this, you need to think it through. And for an intuitive, when you don't make that decision right away, then it's gone. Like you will go into confusion. So that was huge for me.
I would think you kind of go into that place of just mind chatter.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or confusion, like confusion.
Not sure what to
do.
do.
The hamster wheel in the brain. Yeah.
And then I almost think it takes you longer to make those decisions because you're sitting on them. In a way that totally makes sense. So how do you feel that it's also helped others? Like you've been working with, I mean, you've worked with thousands of people. Like at this point, how have you seen it help other people?
Oh my goodness, so many ways. So first of all, understanding your strategy, how you best work with other people. And for me as a manifester, I'm here to initiate and inform. And if I don't inform, that causes problems. But for most people are here to respond, and they're here to just like respond to life, respond to questions. And so just really understanding that really helps with communication between people. There's just so many ways, Nikki. I think for me, human design is wonderful. Gene Keys goes deeper. And so when we get into Gene Keys, it's really all about like understanding your life's work, your purpose, what keeps you healthy.
Right.
I have seen people have like things going on in their bodies that doctors couldn't even understand. But once they got in alignment with who they are, like tremors will go away and things like that. So it's crazy.
It's really interesting because I think, and like I said, we'll get into this in just a little bit about Drayson's human design, but it's interesting that you say that because I think sometimes we don't realize how out of alignment we really are, even culturally, even, society-wise. Like there's a lot of things that after I had mine done with you, it was like I realized that there were certain things that I was way off on. But as soon as I started acknowledging those things, it made a really big difference for me.
Yeah. And I think most of us kind of know when we hear it, like, oh, yes, that is me.
Yeah.
And it really helps to align them back with who they really are because they innately know this, but we get conditioned by other people and society.
And we're conditioned from the minute we're born.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. Try to deprogram that. And so do you feel that, so just to explain to our audience here the difference between human design and Gene Keys, because I know I'm saying both, but can you explain a little bit about the difference between, like, I know Gene Keys is basically kind of like is it a subcategory of human design, or how would you best explain that?
Yeah, I would probably say it's a branch off of human design.
Okay.
So Ra Uru
Yeah.
downloaded this. It's kind of like Enneagram was also downloaded. Like it just came, and it's so complex that it had to come from somewhere.
Right.
We don't understand it, but it is more, human design's more about like how we show up in the world, how our body works. And then Gene Keys goes a level deeper into like life's work, what we're here to learn, purpose, how we attract certain people to us, or even to the point of attracting opportunities and prosperity and all kinds of things. So it is a little bit of law of attraction too.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Do you find that it's been hard for some people to accept or hear their human design? I have to ask, like, so how hard has it been,
Surprisingly not as hard as I thought it would be, because I was totally not into astrology or anything like that.
Right.
But the minute they hear their design, they're like, oh yeah, this is me. So it, once they hear
Kind
it,
of debunks their preconceived notions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting.
There's no mistaking it.
Oh my gosh. So why are those gene keys really important? If you start honing in on the gene keys, can you kind of expand a little bit about why they're so important when you're looking at, like, I know, so something that Stacy and I, just for those of you listening in today, that we started doing was we started looking at my gene keys specifically. So not just my human design chart, but my gene keys specifically. And we've only done one gene key, but even that one gene key, I was like, oh boy, do I have some work to do. So I guess my question is, can you kind of briefly explain why they're so important to really focus on? Like, I think it's also being open-minded to the idea of working on yourself too.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think self-awareness is the best gift we can give ourselves. And so all of us are born with these keys in certain places. And depending on, our time of birth and everything, we're going to have different keys in different places. So it starts with like your life's work. So we talked about your life's work, and there's always, for all of us, a shadow level and then a gift that comes out of the shadow.
Okay.
And then at the highest essence, they call it a siddhi. It's Siddhi. It's a Sanskrit word that means your highest essence. And so, for instance, my life's work, the shadow is unease. The gift that comes out of it is my intuition. And the highest level is clarity. And so in my life's work, I'm really here to not just put at ease my unease, but help other people using my intuition. So my intuition comes in. I feel like it just tells me what to say.
Right.
And it helps people understand, and it brings clarity to their shadows and their gifts. So it's working through those shadows, because shadows make us get stuck. Like, shadows don't allow flow in our life. They don't allow freedom in our life. And we tend to go into like a victim, like everything is outside of us when everything really is inside of us.
Okay.
And so once we understand that shadow and the gift, so each key has a special gift and a key that unlocks that gift.
Okay.
And it's different for every key. But once we understand that and start practicing it, it helps to move us to that higher frequency.
That higher frequency.
Where everything starts to flow and we feel free and we don't feel like a victim anymore. So
Right. And kind of moving out of that place of, so my last podcast episode was about moving out of a state of ego into what I coined as love, trust, and influence.
Absolutely.
And so that's very much sounds like kind of what you're describing, like getting out of that egocentric driven thought process. And I think it's true. I mean, I'm very much my own, to my own fault. I get caught in that mind chatter all the time.
We all do.
And so I think that's been one of the hardest things that I've had to try to overcome is, get out of my headspace, shift my mindset into a different way so that I can focus on some of these gifts that you're talking about. So That's really interesting. So I know we've had so many talks, Stacy and I have had so many talks about this subject, and I absolutely love it. And what was interesting was I asked you to do a human design on Drayson.
I asked you.
That's right. You did ask me because you did. And I remember because I felt a little intimidated by it. And I was like, I don't know. And just for those of you listening, keep in mind, you've never met Drayson.
Never.
She's never met Drayson. Mm-mm. So what was crazy was she pinpointed him so well that I almost fell out of my chair. I think I even got emotional. I started to cry because I couldn't believe how on point it was. Mm-hmm. And so I want you to kind of explain how you feel that this would help parents who have kids on the spectrum, or just parents in general who have kids. Like, I know you've made the comment before, I wish I had this when my kids were young. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So one of the reasons I wanted to look at that is because I have a daughter who was diagnosed with Asperger's at the age of 16. And from basically the age of 4 to 16, we knew something was off, but we just didn't know what was off. And I literally prayed for instructions for my kids, not just her, but both kids, because they were so wildly different. And I had a coach at the time that said, I think she has ODD. And I'm like, no, she's the sweetest child you'd ever meet. And she's got a big heart. So there's just no way. So I wish I would have had this a long time ago. And so I did her gene keys, and a lot of her traits showed up. And I thought, I'd love to see if there's other traits with other kids with different diagnosis. And so that's why I asked you. But do I think it's helpful? Is that the question?
And how do you feel it could benefit parents? I mean, I feel personally, and I can only give my own testimony, is that it just, things that I already knew about Drayson, it just gave me more insight on. And I think it validated a lot of things for me. Do you feel like working with other people and even with parents with their kids doing this, that it would help give them some more insight about their children and what that could do for them?
I do, because I think one of the hardest things for kids on the spectrum is that communication piece, communicating what's going on and how they're feeling and all the things. And this gives you a little bit of insight into how they're hardwired. And so you're able to understand some of their feelings, understand a little bit more of where they're coming from. I know it's helped me. Even my daughter's 30 now, and we're going through her gene keys right now. And it's been really fun to see even the growth that she's had now going through it.
And you're like, I could have saved myself so much time.
So much time.
I could have saved myself so much time from
heartache
and the pain and anguish and and all of the above. It was saved thousands of dollars on the therapy bill.
For sure.
My goodness. Well, I really want to delve a little bit more into this. And I know we're going to talk about our human design charts, but we are actually going to leave that for part 2 on Pieces for My Puzzle. So stay tuned for next week's episode, where we're going to actually talk about my human design chart and Drayson's human design chart, this will be really, really exciting for you guys to hear. But hopefully it'll also give you guys some insight and some things that you can take those golden nuggets and put them to good use. I will also be posting Stacy's information in the show notes. So if you are interested in reaching out to Stacy, please do. She's a wealth of information and knowledge, and I know she would love to do your human design and gene keys for you as well. Thanks so much for tuning in today. This concludes our episode. If you have any questions, comments, or even some show topics that you would like to hear about, please feel free to email us at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. Appreciate you listening today. Don't forget to hit that like and follow button on Facebook and Instagram, or subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Until next time, we'll see you next week. But until next time, keep working on your puzzle. And remember, you don't have to have it all solved in a day. Take care.